actually a little lost. We still can't figure.
So since Jade voted for the editor of Red Hen and she is the boss of Maine, which no one really knows besides me, and probably Doctor over there, we are going to the editor of Red Hen, and we will do Gisela right after that.
Yay.
Yeah. Hey, why do I have it as Karen? I am so sorry. That camera right there.
Okay, got it. So I'm the editor of Red Hen Press and the co-founder. We are in Los Angeles. We publish about 25 titles a year. And if you listen to the last talk, we are what Dr. Doctor would call a traditional publisher. This is what our catalog looks like right now. This is what the cover of Allison Joseph's book looks like. And I'll tell you a little bit about this book later. So we started Red Hen 24 years ago. And originally, there wasn't a lot of self-publishing at that time. And so what I wanted to do was have a collective. And collective publishing is basically like you self-publish together. So you have 4 friends and you decide to start a publishing company together. So all those different jobs that have to be done by the publisher, the marketing somebody does, the design somebody does, the editorial somebody does. You have different jobs, and everything will eventually be published is kind of the idea.
Sharon, get your mic, because I can't. I'm so sorry.
No problem.
I got it. Go ahead. Keep on talking. Keep on talking.
Okay.
It's fine.
So that was the original intention, and we became a nonprofit, changed the name to Red Hen Press, based on the story of the little red hen that everybody wants to eat the bread, but no one else wants to help. And at that point, it was clear to me that 2 of us were doing all the work. And so I think that's often the case in publishing, that there's 1 or 2 people that do the heavy lifting. And so we decided that we would become a nonprofit. That way we could get some grants, and that would help us fund some of our staff. And we would be able to be a more traditional publisher. So in terms of the world of publishing, there's 5 big publishers in New York. We used to call them the Big 6, and then Random House and Penguin got together. I like to think of them as Random Penguin, but they are actually Penguin Random. And so now there's Big 5 in New York, and then there's university presses, indies, and then a big world of self-publishing. And there are a few collectives left. So we get our books, of which about 1/3 are poetry and 2/3 are prose. The poetry just comes to us through Submittable. So people are just submitting online to us. But as the previous speaker said, much of the prose comes to us through agents. So the agents will send us work. I'm the acquisitions editor, so I'm reading it and getting excited about it. The other thing that I wanted to riff on with our previous speaker was talking about how much work the writer has to do. And I think one of the myths is that if you're self-publishing, you have to do all the work. But if you're with a traditional publisher, you don't have to do much work. This is not really true. You have to do the work, a lot of work as a writer, regardless of what publishing platform you had. Even if you were with a hybrid publisher, they would be making certain things easier, like the ISBN, the Library of Congress. They probably would send your book out to reviewers, and we would certainly be doing all of that as well. But we need the author to get out there and promote the book as well. So, for example, Allison Joseph, if you look her up, you'll see she's an African-American poet. She teaches at Carbondale. She has 16 other books out, so she's very active. She has a very active online presence. So the previous speaker was talking about promoting yourself on social media. She does that very actively. She's always telling you what she's doing every day, what events she's having. She walked her social media followers through her tenure process, you know, step by step, so you knew when she got tenure. So she's very active. And in fact, when we sent her this cover, she promoted it on social media and immediately got 800 people that loved this cover. Okay, so that's very good. That's the kind of thing you want. So a poetry book often only sells 1,000 to 2,000 copies, right? So she's already got 800 people that like her cover. That's very exciting for us as a publisher, because it means there's some energy, there's some excitement out there. The other thing that, as a small independent publisher publishing 25 titles a year, that I was able to really do is think about our aesthetics. So I have a PhD, and I had written my dissertation on poetry by lesbians and African-American poets. So I focused a lot of time on Gwendolyn Brooks, Lucille Clifton, and Audre Lorde. And so in the beginning, I was very excited about publishing African-American poets. We ended up publishing 2 books by Doug Kearney, 2 books by Camille Dungy. We published Percival Everett. Chris Abani, who's a Nigerian writer's first American publisher. We did 3 books with him. And finally, someone sat me down and said, "You're in Los Angeles. You need to pay more attention to Latino writers as well." I was like, yes, you're right. But at that point, we were getting a lot of African Americans submitting manuscripts to us because it was clear as an editor that's what I was excited about. But we weren't receiving many Latino writers. And so we set up a Latino prize called Letras Latinas, and we work with another organization, the Letras Latinas organization, which does other prizes. And so they helped us select the winner of this prize, and every 2 years we do a book through that. After that, we started getting more Latino writers submitting to us. So to a certain extent, one of the things that's good to think about when you're thinking about a traditional publisher is, what do they do well? One year I was at the LA Times Book Festival, and this person came and said to me, "I have a cookbook I want you to publish." And I was like, "Well, we don't really do cookbooks." And then they said, "Well, it's a lesbian cookbook. You publish a lot of lesbians." I'm like, first of all, do lesbians eat differently? But secondly, again, let's focus on, this is a cookbook. There are certain presses that do cookbooks really well. I don't think we're one of them, right? I would have to have an understanding of this. Most people who publish cookbooks, for example, there's somebody on staff who's a bit of a foodie, okay? I'm not a bit of a foodie. When my husband's out of town, I'm eating tuna out of the can. So I wouldn't be a good person to be a cookbook editor, the whole level of skill. So I wanted to say, keeping within my time, that there's a lot of challenges to working in publishing. First of all, publishing has changed a lot. We used to print out a copy and you'd send it off to the printer. Now you just upload it. There are problems in terms of distribution, getting books out into bookstores and so on. But there's nothing that's more challenging, I think, than media. Working with getting people to know about your book. And so I liked what the former speaker was saying about how you have to basically do everything on the list. You have a good launch and you promote that, and you do events and you promote that, and you do social media and you have a website. So it's and if there's a piece of that list that you can't do yourself, you get someone to do it for you. One of our authors is someone named William Trowbridge. And when I first explained all this to him, he said, Kate, you got to understand, I'm 75. I live in Missouri, and I'm not going to be able to do a website, and I'm not going to be able to do social media. I was just like, whoa, I don't even want to publish this book then. And I was like, you have to do this. And he said, well, I don't think I can learn this skill set at this point. And I'm like, do you have any grandchildren? Do you have any students? Do you have any graduate students? I know you teach graduate school. So he paid for a website, which again, our former speaker is saying there's things you just have to pay for, right? If you want a book trailer, you have to pay for it. If you want a website, you have to pay for it. So he paid for a website, and then he got people to help him with social media. And it's really as simple as you're promoting on social media that you're going to do an event. And then after the event, let's say there was 8 people there. You gather them all together, you take a picture, and you say, these are some of my thousands of fans that came to my reading, right? And there you are with a group of them, right? Hopefully there are thousands of fans. And we really worked this promotion on social media. And within 6 months, he became the Poet Laureate of Missouri. And at that point, he had a much bigger platform for promoting his work. The 3 things that I would say are sort of the biggest things I've learned in this process are, one is to get out of the house. And, you know, you don't know everything. And once you get out of the house, ask a lot of questions. So I started going to Minneapolis every year because there's 3 independent presses in Minneapolis. There's Grey Wolf, there's Coffee House, there's Milkweed. These are the 3 presses I sort of wanted to be when I grew up. So I started asking them questions. How do you do different things? I'll give you one example. At one of these meetings, I asked, you know, when they release all of their books. So in other words, you have 10 books you're releasing in the spring. In our case, we released them all on the same date. And the reason was that we gang produced the books. So we would lay them all out, do all the covers, do all the editing, and then send them all off to the printer. And they were like, it's much harder to get publicity in media doing it like that. It's much easier if you have staggered release. So there's 2 in January, 2 in February, like that. And so it makes it much easier on your media people. And I thought, well, we still want to kind of gang produce them, but of course you can. You would just have to do it all in the fall, right? You just have to change your production schedule. So as soon as I came home, we changed that way of doing things because the way we were doing things didn't make sense for the media department. So you get out and you learn from other people. The second thing I've learned as I've gone along is goes along with that, which is you're willing to change your game. In any way, when you find out other people are doing it like this, there's a better way of doing this, you are willing to change your game. And the third thing is that I think it's very easy in publishing to get discouraged because it feels like you've got this book that you're excited about. Like, you know, you guys are excited about this book. Are other people excited about it? And if you feel like there's only 100 people that are excited, that just feels too small, like you're small in the world. And you've done all this work to produce this, and not enough people are excited. And I think that you have to keep having fun. And you have to keep saying, if 100 people are excited about this book, and each of them could get one more person excited about it, I could get it out there in the world. So I think that whenever I start to feel discouraged, like I'm not doing something that's important enough, I haven't published enough people, I just say to myself, like, you just can only do one book at a time. And each day I try to have fun with what I'm doing. And I remember that when I got into this, I wanted to publish books that were being ignored by those big 5 publishers in New York. Previous speakers obviously talking about that too. There's these the big presses in New York are looking for the next 50 Shades of Grey. I was looking for the next story by a Nigerian immigrant, by a Latina house cleaner. And that person's story would resonate out for a different audience that didn't necessarily go to Ivy League schools and didn't have everything handed to them. I wanted to hear the stories from people who are outsiders, as I always feel like the people with dirty boots have the best stories. Thank you all so much for having me.
Oh, wait a minute.
Here.
Yep, Q&A.
Yes, I forgot the Q&A. Thank you.
So do you ever think there'll be the return of a celebrity writer like in the ages of Fitzgerald and
I think, first of all, that there are celebrity writers. And like in LA, the big writers that get celebrated, like David Hewlin and Seth Greenland and Tom Lutz and everything, notice all these people have something in common. there's a lot of white men that get celebrated. Jonathan Franzen, Michael Chabon. You could say, what about Toni Morrison? But okay, we've just mentioned Toni Morrison, right? I still feel that there's a lot of white men that get celebrated. And maybe that's part of the reason that in terms of Red Hen's publishing program, we've focused on women and people of color as much as possible, because I feel like there's lots of publishing slots for the well-educated white man. So I still see there are people like that. If you look at someone like Ta-Nehisi Coates, who wrote We Are 8 Years in Power, I feel like he had to really like part the Red Sea to have his voice heard in the beginning, and now we're all listening to him. But I think that it takes much more work, and it takes someone to be your literary champion and get behind you if you're not one of those people who went to Ivy League schools and had everything handed to you. Yes.
Are you interested in cute little African American girls that write poetry?
Yes, I definitely am interested in cute little African American girls that write poetry. I think, I first of all think that there's a much bigger market every year for poetry. Poetry sales have gone up 30% in the last few years. And part of it is that the spoken word movement, the slam movement, millennials seem to read poetry. Obviously, Instagram poets, like the Milk and Honey book opened up some more space, because one of the things with poetry is if you could, there's sort of gateway drugs to it. If you read Mary Oliver and you liked her, if you read Judy Grahn, if you read Audre Lorde, someone who gave you a little understanding in the room, and then you started wanting to read more poetry, you can start to get into it. So maybe you are going to be one of those gateway poets for people. Any other questions?
So I want to say thank you so much for being the inspiration.
Thank you.
Year 2018.
Thank you
and
so
you can
much.
receive your certificate in the mail, because they would not print out for the life of them. And
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
This has been a presentation of the Inspirational Women in Literature Conference 2018 presented by the Anti-Thought Ladies.